Good evening, everyone. I'm on to the CEO, Alison Beckwith, who will read out the formalities.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome all. This is an ordinary meeting of Council. My name's Alison Beckwith and I'm the Chief Executive Officer here at Banyule. Before we start, there are some housekeeping items I need to take you through. The Victorian Government has declared a state of emergency across the entire state in response to the COVID-19. Council is prioritising the health, safety and wellbeing of our staff and residents in all our decisions regarding the management of our services. Council has taken the following steps to ensure compliance with the government's COVID-19 rules for gathering. Members of the public must not attend the meeting. There have been no provisions made to accommodate members of the public tonight. We are keeping the meeting open and accessible to you online. The Council meeting will be live streamed via our website and Facebook pages so that residents do not have to attend in person to participate. The live stream will allow you to tune in at any time and re-watch any part of the public meeting at your convenience whenever you have internet access. As you will see tonight, we have spaced out our seating to a minimum of at least 1.5 metres apart. Council's request to speak process has been amended, requiring those who requested to speak at this evening's meeting to submit their statements to be read out on their behalf. Therefore, statements will be read out prior to the consideration of each item tonight. Public health recommendations are that meetings of more than 2 hours increase the risk of transmission of the virus. Therefore, public questions will no longer be read out at the conclusion of tonight's meeting. This will help us to reduce the duration of meetings. Public questions and the corresponding answers will be included in the minutes. We thank you for tuning in tonight and for adapting with us during these rapidly changing times. We are continuing to monitor announcements and warnings for health and safety for all in our community. The rules for public participation during the request to speak process is that no question or statement may be derogatory, defamatory or directed to an individual councillor, member of the staff, ratepayer or member of the public. Statements read tonight have been amended to ensure compliance with this. A 3-minute time limit applies to all statements. A warning will sound at the 2.5-minute mark, and if required, then the reader will sum up for the last 30 seconds. Any comments or private messages directed to us during the live stream will not be presented to the Council or have a bearing on the conduct of tonight's meeting. So I'll just introduce you to who we have at tonight's meeting. So from your right, we have Mark Gilio, Director of Corporate Services, Councillor Peter Castaldo, Councillor Craig Langdon, the Mayor, Alison Champion, Councillor Mark Di Pasquale, Councillor Tom Malikan and Scott Walker, Director of City Development. Just behind me we have Gina Burden, the Manager of Governance and Communications, and also Vivian Filano, Governance Coordinator. In the room tonight we also have Council's Business Team Leader, Emily Outlaw. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I would like to pass on to Councillor Craig Langdon, who would like to make a statement this evening. Councillor Langdon, the floor's yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I have been advised by yourself that Kevin Bigini has expressed dismay about comments I made at the Council meeting on the 6th of April after a statement was read out in his name in relation to item 6.1 on that agenda. I understand that a shortened version of Mr Bigini's statement was read out and I reacted to the words and did not have the context of his full statement, which has since been provided to me. I felt at the time the words were offensive and could be considered homophobic. As Chair of the LGBTIQ+ Council Advisory Committee, I'm well aware how words can be extremely hurtful to members within our community. I also believe I had to stand up for that community. I did not at any stage state Kevin as a person is homophobic. I apologise for any offence and dismay my comments may have caused him. Council has worked quickly to make a number of changes to the conduct of our council meetings to ensure that we comply with the stringent safety restrictions brought by the COVID-19 pandemic. Since the meeting of the 6th of April, the online request to speak form has been modified to allow greater length. During this time, Council will continue to refine and modify its processes.
Thank you, Councillor. Our meeting is being held on the traditional land of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people, and on behalf of Banyule City Council, I wish to acknowledge them as the traditional custodians. I would also like to pay my respects to the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung elders, past, present and emerging, and to acknowledge other Aboriginal and Torres Strait elders joining us here today. Apologies and leave of absence. We do have Councillor Wayne Phillips and Councillor Rick Garotti. Our apologies this evening. Would any other councillor like to advise of any other leave of absence of which they're aware? We have none. Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council, the special meeting of council held on the 4th of May 2020. Can I please have a councillor move? Councillor Craig Langdon, a seconder, Councillor Tom Melican. I now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Are there any disclosures of interests? There are none. Okay, item 2.1, Deloraine Aged Care, Adeline Street, Greensborough. Request for investigation to create an indented, paved and curbed ambulance parking space. There are two submitters. The two submitters, each statement will be read out, one by our CEO, Alison Beckwith, and one by our Director of Corporate Services, Mark Giulio.
Thank you, Mayor. This statement's being read on behalf of Kevin Biagini from Ivanhoe, and his statement is, considering the harsh impact of the COVID-19 upon the senior members of our community, anything that can be done to improve the lives of those community members is considered highly worthy. For those reasons, Bragg supports the petition and upholds the council recommendation. Thank you.
Director Mark.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm speaking on behalf of Liz Jenkins from Deloraine Aged Care from Greensborough and speaking for. Deloraine Aged Care facility located at 18 Adeline Street, Greensborough, urges the Banyule City Council to consider its petition request for an indented, paved and curved parking space large enough for an ambulance or aged care facility bus, as detailed in the petition request. A petition of 63 signatures has been received. A further 29 signatures have now been received in support of this petition request and emailed to Banyule City Council. Deloraine is an award-winning aged care facility that has been servicing the local community from Adeline Street since around 1970, 50 years. Historically, access to the facility has not been problematic, but parking restrictions introduced in around 2017 during a period of considerable construction activity in Adeline Street have created a series of issues. The primary issue for which we are seeking a resolution today is that the parking restrictions on the eastern side of Adeline Street mean there is now nowhere for a bus service we provide to residents to park outside the ramp entrance to Deloraine Aged Care. This side of the street has been designated as no standing. In the current prevailing environment where COVID-19 infection is of high concern both in the broader community and within the Deloraine community, we also have concern that being forced to park the bus at great distance to the facility introduces greater risks of transmission between the general public and our residents, or vice versa. Deloraine Aged Care submits this petition request for a designated parking place on the eastern side of Adeline Street for the following reasons. 1. Resident boarding of Deloraine bus for outings. As it stands, Deloraine does not have a current option for bus parking arrangements that helps to ensure the safety of our residents and promote their independence when going on outings. The residents either have to dangerously try to cross over to the other side of Adeline Street where there are no parking restrictions, if we can even secure a parking place on that side of the street, which usually has several cars parked. Alternatively, the residents are required to walk much further down the Adeline Street, minimum 50 to 100 metres, which has a significant downward slope. This means that most of the residents need wheelchair assistance just to board the bus. This impacts on their independence and self-worth. If the residents could just exit via the ramp entrance to Adeline Street to board the bus as a designated parking place, most of them could do this by self-ambulating. It is safer and more convenient for Deloraine residents, aged approximately 90 years average, to board the bus outside the ramp on Adeline Street.
Thank you, Director. Thank you for that. Okay, can I please have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Mark Di Pasquale, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Tom Melican. Councillor Mark, as the mover, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would, just to give a bit of background to my fellow councillors to understand a little bit more. And thank you also, Ms Jenkins, for submitting this evening as well and giving us a little bit more information on how the facility works down there. I have been down there a few times and seen how that facility actually works. So the ramp, as being indicated, is actually the ramp where it's the ramp going into the underground car park, which isn't high enough for a bus to go under or an ambulance, etc. So it's a car park, staff car park, etc. I believe there are a couple of visitor spots under there, although I'm not quite sure. But really the impact is so visitor parking to the facility, residents parking as well. So they're under pressure on a small street. So if we have two cars parking on either side of the road, it doesn't leave much room for a car, let alone a bus or an ambulance, to go through the middle. It is quite a narrow street. The street is also on a bit of a hill too, and there have been, and I have gone out to the site in the past because residents and also at the facility here have been a bit concerned that the traffic is travelling too fast down the hill towards the secondary college, which I understand that. So what needs to happen here is this petition will investigate whether a bus could park somewhere other than on that ramp, because once that ramp gets blocked up by a bus, as an example, or an ambulance, you can't get in and out of that car park as well very easily. So, of course, Mayor, I think how this will have to work is the needs of the facility with regards to visitors, residents, etc., will have to be, probably a letter needs to be sent to them. They've probably got to, be asked, etc., how it would function. The only other thing I'd like councillors to understand as well is that the pressures on this road have increased over the years. There's two developments, one next door and one across the road, which are multi-unit developments, 3 units in there. So that, and generally as we see, councillors, when developers go for these, sometimes they offset some of the car parks onto the street, and they don't necessarily have all the car parks on the actual property themselves. So this is probably a little bit of a notification to the planning department too, that maybe applications need to have the appropriate parking on site, so it takes the pressure off the road where residents may have to park sometimes. So just a bit of background there, Mayor. So happy to move that we bring this petition to council, and then let's have our officers investigate and see where it goes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thomas, the seconder, would you like to speak to the item?
Yeah, just say a few words. Yeah, I actually went past there on the way to the council meeting tonight and had a bit of a look. I do know this facility. I remember that development process. It was quite lengthy and there was a lot of discussion at that time. But I can understand what their concerns are. I think we should be looking at this. The recommendation is to refer this to the traffic engineers, and that's the correct recommendation. I look forward to their report coming back.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Okay. Councillor Mark, as the mover, would you like a right of reply? Okay. And I now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Item 4.1, Draft Community Climate Action Plan for Public Exhibition. There are 3 submitters. We have prepared statements which will be read out by our CEO Alison Beckwith and Director of Corporate Services Mark Gilio.
Thank you, Mayor. The first statement is being read on behalf of Rosamond Krivenek from West Heidelberg, and she's speaking for the item. The Council is to be commended for developing a community action plan. It is essential to encourage and enable community effort to reduce green gas emissions. I submit a few comments and suggestions. These are in relation to the tables of proposed community action plan actions involved in pages 24 to 32 of the attachments. In relation to item 3.4 on page 26, I advocate removing any planning restrictions on placement of solar panels to conceal them from street views, particularly on existing housing. It should be possible to place solar panels for optimum energy collection. In relation to item 5.2 on page 28, in pursuing the installation of electric vehicle charging stations, Council should ensure they are powered by 100% sustainable energy sources. In relation to item 5.4 on page 28, Council's public transport advocacy should include improvements in service frequencies and more demand-responsive services, because replacement of private vehicle trips with shared transport options reduces greenhouse gas emissions. In relation to item 6.6 on page 29, in addition to pursuing product stewardship of common household items, Council should advocate supermarkets for simple solutions to single-use plastic containers, for example, household cleaning products. And in relation to items 7.2, 7.3 and 7.4 on pages 30 to 31, prioritise preventative measures that are within Council's remit by retaining porous surfaces and upgrading drainage and water storage on both public and private land. Thank you for the opportunity to make this submission tonight.
Thank you. Director Mark.
Yes, speaking on behalf of David Mulholland from Heidelberg Heights, which is speaking against the motion. Banyule City Council are spending $2.35 million for a carbon neutral council. Just over $2 million for the Climate Change Action Program, which includes carbon offsets and funding for general climate investigation. All the while spending circa $7 million less on infrastructure and raising rates by 2% during the global virus crisis. Bragg believes Council has their priorities wrong. This Council will unfortunately disagree. The plan looks more like another multi-million dollar spend, which the Council will be reaching into ratepayers' pockets to fund, with future rate increases of 2.5% planned already. There is no financial detail in this plan to analyse. You can have the best plan ever, but if it's going to cost a bomb, it's not feasible. There is also some strange notions in there. Encouraging the community to reduce meat. How does this support our local butchers? Not at all. Under Money for Good, Council are encouraging the community to change their superannuation and mortgage provider. Council should be checking with legislation on providing financial advice, as this may be illegal. Under Council's priority actions, Council has again obfuscated the investment required by showing anything above $100,000 as $3 symbols. Any of these projects could be in the millions, for all the public knows. This again shows that no care to financial responsibility in this document. Another disappointment is that Council cannot or will not quantify the impact of any of these individual priority actions on climate. Bragg believes no value can be found from this plan due to the lack of financial detail and information on climate reduction.
Thank you. And back to you, Alison.
Thanks, Mayor. This next statement is being read on behalf of Anthony Lunken from Heidelberg West, and he's speaking for the item tonight. Thank you, Mayor, councillors and council officers, for the opportunity to comment on the public exhibition of the draft Community Climate Action Plan. It is great to see that Council is progressing its work on implementing one of its key policy directions to lead in planning for and responding to climate change. I thank Council officers for the extensive and thorough work they have undertaken to produce such a comprehensive document. There will, of course, be ratepayers who do not support such extensive actions to address a long-term problem, either because they do not accept there is a climate emergency or they feel the council should be more focused on the shorter-term dangers of the COVID-19. This is why, to produce the outcomes sought in the plan, extensive consultation will be required to achieve strong buy-in from wide sectors of the residents and business community. It might therefore be useful to include in the recommendation Council approves tonight a reference to the intended width of the consultations. Environment groups will undoubtedly support much of the plan, but will also want to be reassured that their input will be given proper consideration, especially as there is only a 2-day revision period proposed from the end of the consultation to the finalisation of the plan. The draft plan is detailed and it will take some time to digest in order to give reasoned and reasonable feedback. So it is pleasing that the consultation period is longer than usual. The state government is shortly to make an announcement on its emission reduction targets for 2025 and 2030, as required by the Climate Change Act 2017, and Council might like to consider how Banyule could align any targets it sets with those timelines. Finally, as you know of my interest in this area, I was delighted to see included in the draft plan that Council will continue to participate in the opportunities to improve environmentally sustainable design standards through the planning process and ultimately to achieve net zero emission and climate resilient buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a councillor move a motion, please? Councillor Langdon, you have a question?
Yes, two questions actually for two different directors. First one is David Mulholland states that Council is planning a 2.5% rate increase this year, next year and years to come. Is it not true that what we can put on our rate increases is set by the state government and no one knows what they are until December of the following, just before we set our rates?
Director Mark.
Through you, Mayor. That is correct. The rate cap is set by the state government at around about December each year. Council does, however, make a bit of an assumption of what they could do for their long-term planning, and it's in the order of the 2% based on next year's rate cap.
Thank you. That's 2%, not 2.5, but still a minor difference. Also, Anthony, or Tony as I know him as, raised the issue of there's a 2-day revision period proposed at the end of consultation to finalise the plan. Director, is that correct?
Director Scott.
Thanks, Mayor. Through yourself. When we were initially planning the process for exhibition of the draft Community Climate Action Plan, a 4-week period of exhibition was anticipated, and this is the usual practice. We've extended it for 6 weeks in the current circumstances and making sure that we go and exhibit the plan to a wide range of medium to make sure that we get the sufficient coverage. The extent of time at the end to review it has been shortened because of that. However, if we need longer because of the number of submissions and the range of submissions, then that will need to be taken before we bring it back to Council for a formal decision. So that might need to be extended.
Follow-up question if I can, Mayor. Should we move that to be extended? 2 days is a very short time. I realise you can just said it could be extended. I don't want to seem rushed either, but I realise we are ticking time because we want certain resolutions passed before we go into caretaker mode. So it's a fine balance, I understand. But do we need to resolve it here, or can the department do that?
Director Scott.
Thanks, Mayor. No, the department can do that. The department will be reviewing the plan as submissions are received, and will take the time that we need before we bring it back to Council for a formal decision.
Does any other councillor have a question? Okay, so Councillor Peter, you look like you were moving that item. Moved by Councillor Peter Castaldo. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Tom Milliken. Councillor Castaldo, as the mover, would you like to speak to the item?
Firstly, I'd like to thank Sian Gleeson, the lead author, and the rest of the team that provided input to this very important document going out to the community for public consultation over the next 6 weeks. I'd also like to acknowledge the community that provided input up until now, BIAC, and the two very well considered contributors this evening, Rosamond and Anthony. This is the second instalment of our renewed climate action package that is focused on our community, the most important component to Banyul's climate action package being 97% of the emissions in Banyul. This is an investment in both our community's economic prosperity and action to better our environment. Like COVID-19, the climate emergency is something we need to face, and the sooner the better. There will always be those that seek answers from conspiracies and the hardcore ideologues that will deny human-induced climate change. There is no better time than now to take action and make investment in our future. I made those investments myself around 10 years ago and have already had my full investment recovered through savings. I no longer have an energy bill. It is important that we enable and support our community to take action, and there is no better organisation to provide that trusted advice and support than Council. I estimated, based on my own action, that over $2 billion investment in housing stock in Banyul could create hundreds, if not thousands, of local jobs over many years to come. And then there is business. And then the non-residential groups, such as schools, where there is very significant opportunities as well. This is an exciting time for those that are working to a clean, green, healthy future. It's time to take action. I encourage all the viewers this evening to make submissions and help us improve this very timely and important plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thomas, the seconder, would you like to speak to the item?
I'll just say a few things. Yes, the issues we faced prior to COVID-19 still exist. At this moment, we are very focused on COVID-19 and we will recover from COVID-19. But the issues we faced prior will still exist and we need to address them. And this plan, I think, will go a long way to assist our communities to do that. And surely, no matter what's going on, protecting the environment would still be a priority. And this plan will not only assist people to save money, as Councillor Costello said, on their energy bills, but it will lead to better buildings, better controls, and a far greener and more sustainable community. And this plan will not force anyone to do anything they don't want to do, but it will facilitate and help people save money and live in a more comfortable house. And for people that want to take action, this will facilitate them doing that. So I think this is a great plan. I'd also like to thank the officers. The officers put an enormous amount of work into this and come up with this great plan. I would encourage people to respond. I'd love to hear from as many residents as possible on this plan and as many ideas that we can improve it or streamline it. But it is a great plan. The vast majority of residents in Banyul support us taking action. And I think it's important that we push ahead on the long-term problems that we face. Even though COVID-19 is impacting us greatly now, we still need to focus on our long-term future, and I believe this plan will do that. And I'm very happy for it to go out for public consultation.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Craig.
Thank you, Mayor. As the recommendation explains, this is going out to public consultation for a 6 weeks period, which is longer than normal. Look, I look forward to the public coming back to us. You have Bragg writing to us now saying it's not wanted, it shouldn't be done. I want the community to tell us, and I'm sure that Councillor Mallochin is right, there are a lot of people out there wanting us to take action. I don't want to be out-shouted by a minority group. Let the majority, let them have a say with this 6-week consultation. I look forward to seeing their input, and I do again extend my thanks to all the staff involved. And Director, please pass it on from all the councillors for the great work of your staff.
Councillor Mark, you were going to speak to the item?
Thank you, Meg. Yes, just a couple of points. Really, a couple of notes of thanks to BEAC, so the Banyule Environment Advisory Committee. It's our oldest committee. It was the committee that was established here at Banyule before all the other committees, Mayor. Now we have a few. So thank you very much for all the volunteers in the community and also the staff who do run those meetings, although now with COVID-19 they haven't been running, but they'll get back up there again. And also thank you to the councillor representation on BEAC as well. Very, very important. I think, and thank you very much to the submitters this evening, Mayor. There was a recommendation that we should be looking at the state government, the announcements of the emission reduction targets for 2025 and 2030. But now, whether we would align any targets set by those timelines, look, Mayor, I don't know whether the community knows how extensively and what commitments this council has actually made. So we've actually made a commitment, or this council has made a commitment that it is going to be carbon neutral by 2028 without buying offsets. No other council has, gone that far. They've bought offsets or they plan to do it, etc. So, look, I'm waiting to see what the state government have got to offer with regards to targets 2025 and 2030. Let's have a look. But I think they'll come well short of what we're looking at and what our ambitions actually are. And finally, we do need, in my view, corporations or businesses to get on board too, Mayor, because, look, we've had plastic bags banned from Safeway and Coles and other supermarkets, etc. But you still go in there and you get your fruit in plastic. There's still plastic that doesn't really have to be there, Mayor. Why is it that does it have to get to a point where these companies sort of say that they make the decision, or there needs to be some form of governmental action that makes them force their hand? I think they should just cut it out tomorrow. There's other ways to do it. Bring back the old tucker bag. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Peter, as the mover, would you like a right of reply?
Yes. I'll take another opportunity here. We are a council that's taking real action, real savings and no offsets in our plan. We're moving forward and we're going to do it at lightning speed if we get this policy right. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Item 5.1, 12 to 16 Mountain View Road and 1 Allens Road, Montmorency. Proposed part land exchange, public submissions. Council has received 3 submissions in response to this proposal pursuant to section 223 of the Local Government Act 1989. No submitters elected to be heard in relation to their submissions this evening. So can I please have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Craig Langdon, can I have a seconder? Councillor Tom Melican. Councillor Langdon, would you like to speak to the item? Councillor Melican, would you like to speak to the item?
I'll just say a few words. This has been going on for an incredibly long time, and I was quite happy to read this report. There are some submitters. I think the strategy and the policy, the recommendations that will come forward will address many of those issues raised. I think this is a logical, sensible thing to do. It will enable the private owners of the land to enjoy their land and amenity, but it'll also enable the bowling club to facilitate redevelopment of their site as well. And I think this is an excellent outcome. This has been a discussion for a very long period of time to tidy up the boundaries to enable both parties to live properly, but also to seek improvements. And I think this plan addresses all those issues. It also addresses the concerns that the neighbouring properties have raised very well. And I think this is a great step forward, and I'm really quite keen to support this.
Thank you, councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Okay, I now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Item 5.2, Belfield Project Update, Delivery of Social Housing. There is one submitter. The prepared statement will now be read out by CEO Alison Beckwith.
Thank you, Mayor. This statement's being made on behalf of Emma Samuel from Ivanhoe, and she's speaking against the item tonight. Mayor, councillors, officers and residents. My name is Emma Samuels from Ivanhoe, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I have been given the privilege to speak and pay my respects to the Wurundjeri elders past and present. From this item, it would appear that the council has given up on the advocacy for and lobbying of the state government for the development of a school on this site. For many years, a school existed on this site and was a nucleus of the local community. I myself did after-school drama lessons there and had neighbours and a sibling who were employed as staff. This was, of course, until the site was sold off by the previous state governments. I understand from previous comments made on this issue by a councillor that the council feels this land has been left uncapitalised for too long. However, given our community and the country are facing such unprecedented times, and as such the council budget is moving into a deficit, is such a costly and long-term plan still appropriate? The amount allocated in the draft council budget 2020 to 2021 for Belfield Community Centre development is $10 million. The council's underlying operating deficit proposed in the same draft budget from 2020 to 2021 is $9.027 million. Was the same costing model used here as for the Ivanhoe Library, which could foreseeably mean the projected costs could easily increase substantially? By delaying this project by 1 year, council can have a slight surplus for year 2020 to 2021. Such a surplus seems critical at a time when many ratepayers will be suffering from unprecedented cumulative personal and financial hardship and will be looking to their council for support. There has been no evidence given that there are pressing needs for social housing to be developed on this site in 2020 to 2021. Why is this plan being rushed through after the land was left fallow for so many years, particularly by a council who will soon be moving into a caretaker mode? Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Can I have a councillor move a motion, please? Councillor. Questions? Councillor Langdon? Yep.
To the appropriate director, obviously the contents of this, the statements was that us selling the land now is not allowing a school to go along. But what would be the cost if we kept the land for another year or so? There's a cost factor involved in that. Could someone give me an outline, or the public an outline, of that cost factor of just holding the land constantly?
Director Scott.
Thanks, Mayor. It's probably just a couple of things to clarify. In relation to the social housing project, council actually is not selling the land. So council is looking to enter into a lease arrangement over a long term for a social housing provider. So it's not council land being sold for that component of the project. Yes, there is a market housing component of the Belfield project, but hanging on to that land does involve significant costs in terms of maintaining the land, in terms of keeping the land there, and it's an opportunity cost that that council is foregoing in hanging on to that land, and it's something that council, when it purchased this land in the first place, made it very clear that its intention was to support and enable development to happen and to deliver on community facilities. So, without fulfilling that original objective, that's money that council has foregone in making the purchase that it could have used for other things, and really needs to see return back to the community.
Councillor Langdon, you had another question?
The Director would like to elaborate again on a statement by the State Government today on the need for social housing. I think there was a major announcement, and that was one of the greatest pushes of that announcement. Could you elaborate on that?
Director?
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, the government has made a number of moves over recent years to support affordable housing outcomes right throughout Melbourne, including social housing outcomes in particular, and more recently in relation to the COVID-19 response. Specific announcements have been made about money that will be made available to support social housing projects, because they are seen as absolutely critical to those in need within our community that are looking for this type of housing, that are falling through the gaps and through the cracks in relation to affordable housing or public housing provision.
Another question, councillor.
Yes, in relation to the $10 million in the 2021 budget allocated for the Belfield Community Centre development, if the land was to be sold in the same period, that would well and truly cover any $10 million and would add a surplus to our budget, would it not?
Director.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to clarify, that is only 1 year contribution towards the delivery of the community centre, so it is spread over 2 financial years. But certainly that money is being sourced from Council's strategic property reserve to deliver on that community facility project, and it is reliant on funds being available within that reserve. The sale of the market housing would be attributed to that reserve to enable these sorts of projects to proceed. And yes, it would lead an excess above and beyond that would be available for other community projects.
Okay, thank you. Did any other councillor have a question? Okay, Councillor Mark.
Mayor, just a question, please. The appropriate officer who does know the numbers, and I will take this on notice, that's fine, but it was mentioned that budgetary, or with regards to the council budget, that possibly to delay this so that there isn't a deficit in the budget. I'm just want to know, what is it that we as a council have decided, and this is a programming thing, it's a cash thing over the next 15 months or so. How much has this council, putting in for the or being able to have residents with regards to rates, etc., how much will there be available for hardship for our residents in the next 15 months?
Director Mark.
Through you, Mayor, as adopted by the proposed budget a couple of weeks ago, we've allowed in our budget an economic support package for residents to the value of about $10.5 million. That supports both residents and local businesses. And there's a number of things that are involved with that, including an opportunity to defer rates for up to 15 months without penalty interest, a reduction in some community fees, the waiving of community fees and local business fees, assistance with rent, etc. So there's a whole package there which is detailed in the budget. And obviously that has cash flow implications also for council. And that it all depends on what the response we get from the community and how hard they are hit by the virus, and whether they're suffering unemployment, etc. So it's a little hard to tell exactly the numbers, but certainly in terms of our budget, and that's why council are going into deficit, or propose to go into deficit next financial year. The support package is in the order of $10.5 million.
Thank you, Director. Any other question?
Yep. Mayor, just a quick follow-up. Thank you for that, Director. Is that considered the worst case scenario? If this COVID thing goes on for a lot longer, more people can't pay their rates, etc., is that 10.5 million, the programming, the monies, is that the worst case scenario, or could it get worse than that?
Director Mark.
Through you, Mayor, I hope it's the worst case scenario. I hope it's not even worse than that. It's a little hard to tell, depending on the economic circumstances, obviously, with announcements and forecasts with the federal government around a recession and jobs, unemployment, underemployment, etc. We don't know how long that will go on for, but it could be a potential to be worse. But yes, certainly not the worst case scenario, but probably pretty high up there.
Did you have any other questions? Oh, any other questions from any other councillor? Okay. Can I please have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Craig Langdon. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Peter Castaldo. Councillor Langdon, as the mover, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. The first thing I'd like to emphasise, and it was the last statement in the letter that was read out, why is this plan being rushed through? The Belfield Master Plan has been anything but rushed through. It has taken years to proceed, step by step. I received a document from Council, I don't have it in front of me, a number of community meetings we've had, the number of council reports we've been through, etc., etc. It's taken years, so there's by no means is this being rushed through. With the COVID-19 pandemic, I would think any building development would be heralded as a great achievement, creating jobs. If we're going to get this economy back together, we need employment, we need jobs creation. The Belfield Community Centre will create that. The selling of the land and housing developments on those sites will create that substantial amount, and hopefully there'll be a lot of locals employed. But I'm more than pleased to support this. The issue is also raised again about why aren't we still saving it for a school? So if I remember correctly, until the last state election, for about 4 years, this council was lobbied to keep it for a school by one individual more than any other. And went to great lengths to try to rally the local residents, etc., etc. That one resident is now a state member for the upper house, and since that time, now almost 2 years ago, we've received no correspondence from the state government saying we could and should keep the land for a school, or even if the government wants to buy it back. I don't know what more could be said. I think we've offered it 3 times back to them. The local individual that was advocating, she was from Banyule, or Rosanna, for it, is now a state member, and we've heard nothing. So I don't think how more clear a message we could get from the state government. They are not interested. I don't doubt the schooling isn't going to be an issue in the area, but not in this site. Unfortunately, once everyone's there and whatever, there may well be, people might say, where's the school, where's the secondary college? There will be a shortfall. I acknowledge that. The state government doesn't seem to acknowledge it, but council is not a provider for education. We do not do that. The basic thing is roads, rates and rubbish. There was not an extra one saying schooling. So we have to get onto that. This is a great develop. The social housing component, which is all more about this. Again, today it came out with the state government recommending social housing as affordable housing. So I think council is on the right track. I don't think we could be more so. No member of the public locally has contacted me opposing this. The signs have been up, so I think I'm fine with it.
Thank you, councillor. As the seconder, Councillor Peter, would you like to speak to the item?
Firstly, I'd like to thank the officers for providing the latest report on the Belfield project, delivery of social housing. This is an ongoing project, and we've got significant interest in providing social housing. So I'm very happy to see that, some good providers of the services there. I'd also like to acknowledge that our council doesn't need to run a surplus every single year. It's important in a time of COVID-19 that we continue to encourage the economy to move forward, and this is one of those projects that helps do that. And so, unlike the federal government that has run deficit year and year again, we as a council, since I've been here, have been running very economically well managed and always in surplus.
Thank you, councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Mark.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, just a couple of comments. I think councillors, I think it's crucial that we do push on with this project. It has been many, many years, and what we're seeing pre-COVID, and this was especially last year, councillors, when tenders did actually go out, there were not many tenderers taking up the option to have a look at the jobs and submitting. but also, the pool of those doing the work was very slim, and the prices were going up and up and up. And we noticed that over a 2 to 3 year period. This was pre-last year, or from last year. Now what we're seeing is a couple of things you can see on the agenda tonight. We're going to be going through a couple of tenders. The amount of tenderers are increased, and the prices are more than reasonable. So what's happening out there is that, who knows, probably pre-COVID, everything was flying too well. Everyone was getting a little bit greedy and saying, right, we can pretty much charge whatever we want here. But now bring COVID into the picture, and thankfully our building industry and hasn't been shut down, and that can still continue to run. But, things are a lot more scarce, and people need to hold on to their jobs. People need to hold on to whatever they have at the moment, because going forward over the next 18 months, 2 years, it's going to be a harder road than what it was in the past. So I definitely don't think we should wait, councillors. We should go on ahead with this. It will increase jobs. And with regards to what was submitted tonight, with regards to it being critical to keep to have the budget in surplus, look, definitely not in a time of COVID or a time of crisis for a budget to be critically in surplus. It's critical for the budget to be in surplus when we don't have COVID or something like that. So if councils have had a budget that's been in deficit year after year after year, that's a big problem. They're going to be in big trouble this year and next year with the COVID around. So we're going okay. We're putting a lot of money forward so the community can be helped as much as possible. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Okay, Councillor Langdon, as the mover, would you like a right of reply? Okay, I'll now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Item 5.3, changes to planning requirements for non-government schools. There are no submitters. Can I please have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Peter, you have a question.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for the Planning Director, Scott Walker. Could you please summarise some of the implications of this change to the planning scheme involving non-government schools?
Director Scott.
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, happy to talk a little bit about this. What this is doing is changing the responsible planning authority for the approval of new non-government schools and for extensions to existing non-government schools that meets a threshold above $4 million and a few other associated types of planning matters. And it moves it from council to the Minister for Planning. And then it sets a new framework in which the Minister for Planning will then run the planning application processes instead of the council. So the council used to run those. This will set a framework where the Minister for Planning will run those processes, invite councils to make submissions. Residents will still have some opportunity for lodging objections, but it's the Minister for Planning that will make the decision, or his department on behalf under delegation will make the decision on those applications, not the council. And where that decision is made, there's no ability for the council or for residents to appeal that decision to VCAT like they could or they can at the moment when the decisions are made or the process is run by council as a responsible planning authority. So it's really shifting the area of responsibility and taking away the rights to appeal to VCAT for new schools and major extensions to existing schools that are non-government.
Thank you. Can I have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Peter Castaldo. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Tom Melican. Councillor Peter, would you like to speak to the item as the mover?
This is one that can fly under the radar very easily, but this has been brought to our attention and there's very little time our officers have had the opportunity to play a role in advising state government some of the implications of these changes. Now, we've identified a few of those implications in this report and mentioned by Director Walker then. Now, it's also going to impact our community in that it leads to a very significant, it could potentially lead to a very significant surprise to our community. effectively diminishing the council's role and especially the community's opportunity to object or even be notified when there are changes. Now, this was particularly important for a number of schools that have been doing developments in my ward, and while it's essential that those schools have the opportunity to provide important and improved infrastructure to their students, it's also important that our community have an active role. And they're very well established communities, and it's very important that they have a participation opportunity. So I'm a little bit concerned about this, but I thank our officers for providing the feedback they have in that short time frame that they've had. And I think that this is one instance where a response to a time of crisis and COVID to increase economic stimulation and assist developments, it also provides us with potential reductions in the opportunity for our community to be involved in important decision making. So I'm thankful for the quick contribution from officers.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tom, as the seconder, would you like to speak to the item?
Yeah, I don't put this in the same boat as a stimulus response for COVID. I put this in the boat of the state government trying to remove powers from council and diminish the voice of local residents. And I think back over the years with some of the bigger private schools wanting to do massive expansions, and I've sat through many meetings, done many a tour, been in several people's yards, lounge rooms, to discuss the impact of some of these proposals. And each time we've been able to come to some sort of agreement, compromise, changes, so that the schools can develop and provide the service they want, which is important, but also the residents' lives and their homes are protected. And I think we've always achieved the correct balance. What this will do is we'll take councils out of that equation, it will take residents out of that equation, and someone sitting in Burke Street or Collins Street, wherever, will make a decision, and there'll be no third-party rights. People will not be able to appeal those decisions. And I think basically we've got it right today. We've got it. The schools do need to expand, that is correct, but they also need to be liked, appreciated and welcome in their communities. And if they do things that upset the neighbours, that will wreck those relationships. And I think currently the schools have very good relationships with their neighbours. And I think the process has worked to date. It's given people an opportunity to raise their concerns. They're listened to. It's led to changes, and it's led to these schools coexisting in neighbourhoods, and the people appreciate their presence. And I think that will change if this is put through. So I'd like to thank the officers for this report, and I'd encourage the state government to leave things that are working well alone and not try and take this power away from council and residents.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Langdon.
Thank you. My concern is basically summed up by Councillor Mullican. We have private schools that, to be honest, do far more developments on site than the state government schools. State government schools would be more closures than developments. There has been one or two smaller developments, but the private schools have done massive developments within the city of Banyule, particularly the Ivanhoe area, Heidelberg area. To think the council have almost no say in it now, or the local residents will have no say in it, and there has been compromise, there has been discussions. Some of them have taken months, but there has been that process. To see that's gone, I think that's going to actually jeopardise the amenity of local residents, and that will be a tragedy.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Mark.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I just want to make a comment that I'm quite surprised we don't have any submitters or speakers or residents, writing in, not coming in and speaking to us, and because this is something that council is doing or making a submission to the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, raising these issues that the powers of local council for a permit that a private school needs to put in or would need to put in the past don't need to. So they get thrown in the same umbrella as a state school or a government-run school, where effectively they don't need any planning permits, etc. So I'm quite surprised that we don't have any submitters on behalf of the community asking council to make a submission, and council just doing it off its own bat, sees it's the right thing to do as the spokes organisation for the community. So that's very surprising, Mayor. And look, we understand. I'm suggesting that maybe private schools put too much pressure on the state government, and the state government asks private schools to jump through hoops with regards to planning permits, etc. So it's almost like the state government are levelling the playing field now. So in other words, private schools don't need to go and get planning approval from local council. State schools don't. So therefore, the playing field is levelled. So if we look at it from a schooling perspective, that's not a bad thing, because if state schools don't need a permit, well, why should private schools go and get a permit? A lot of principals we've spoken to, committees we've spoken to, why do they have to do it and we don't? So from that aspect, it's probably a good thing, but from the residents, I'm very hesitant. This is not a good thing. So I think we should be voting on this tonight and putting in that submission to the department, because for a resident, local resident, it's not a good thing at all taking that out of their hands. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Peter, as the mover, would you like a right of reply? Okay, I now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Item 7.1, Meeting Procedures Code 2015 Amendment. There are no submitters. Can I have a councillor move a motion, please? Councillor Tom Melican. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Craig Langdon. Councillor Tom, as the mover, would you like to speak to the item?
Oh, just a small comment. That's just a minor change to our meeting procedures to enable us to facilitate special meetings of council under the previous Local Government Act. This was facilitated. The new Government Act doesn't make this allowance for a council to have a special council meeting. This amendment to our procedure will enable us to call a special council meeting as required. So no real change to what we had prior to the new Local Government Act. And I'm happy to support this tonight.
Thank you, councillor. As the seconder, Councillor Craig, would you like to speak? Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Okay, I now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Item 7.2, Council's Powers of Delegation, Local Government Act 2020. There are no submitters. There is a motion that differs from the recommendation in the papers. Could I please ask a councillor to read out the
Just a
recommendation?
minor amendment to the papers, which I'll read, just the changes. That the delegate must not determine the issue, take the action or do the act or thing if the issue, act or action is an issue, action or act of which involves awarding of a contract exceeding the value of $500,000, making an expenditure that exceeds $500,000 unless it is an expenditure made under a contract already entered into, or is an expenditure that council is by or under legislation required to make. That is item 1.2. And also a new point B, that council review the Chief Executive Officer's delegation within 6 months after the General Council election. I so move.
Thank you, councillor. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Craig Langdon. Councillor Tom, as the mover, would you like to speak to the item?
Yeah, another change that was forced upon us by the new Local Government Act 2020. Just a small amendment, but also I think it's important that our new council, which will be in place after October, has the opportunity to look at the delegations of the CEO and make changes that they see fit. And I think that's right and proper, and I think we should specify that right up front, that the new council after October will have that opportunity to review it, not immediately, 6 months after they start, because hopefully there will be some new councillors, or there will be at least 2 new councillors, given we've got 2 new wards. But it's good that councillors will get that opportunity to have their stamp on the delegation authority of the CEO, and that's the correct thing to do. So I'm happy to support it tonight.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Craig, would you like to speak to the item? Would any other councillor like to speak? Okay, I now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Item 7.3, Audit and Risk Advisory Committee minutes, 13th of March 2020. There is one submitter, and that prepared statement will now be read out by our Director of City Development, Scott Walker.
Thanks, Mayor. It's a statement on behalf of Kevin Hill from Ivanhoe, and it's for the item. After 2 years of Bragg constantly probing and prodding Council on its Risk and Audit Committee performance, Bragg is pleased to acknowledge real signs of serious progress by the committee. On behalf of ratepayers, Bragg especially thanks Councillor Garotti, the committee delegate, for his strong lead in starting the slow process of improving corporate risk culture and driving the committee's improved performance and reporting of its work. Bragg is also pleased to acknowledge the significant good work of both the Director, Corporate Services, and his Finance Manager for their contribution to this improved performance. The ongoing external stimulus of Bragg's good faith criticisms of Council concerning Council's risk culture and ethical framework is a perfect example of rational public advocacy being of benefit to Council. Bragg is justifiably proud of its effective public contribution in this matter. Council still has a lot more work to do before it can claim to have an overall satisfactory risk culture. 1. Risk culture auditing and ethical framework. The risk appetite of Council administration team would be expected to be significantly different to that of the political team, and herein lies the paradox of good governance. Council should consider establishing an ethical framework and undertaking an organisational-wide risk culture audit to be conducted by an expert external advisory such as KPMG. The audit should be designed in such a way to provide information about the differences in risk culture between administration and political teams and provide recommendations on how to unify the divergent risk appetites of the two teams and how to create and manage a risk culture that ultimately benefits ratepayers. 2. Operational audits. Bragg notes progress made to date on payroll auditing, purchase order thresholds and internal controls on purchasing. In relation to OH&S auditing, Bragg questions Council on its workplace mental health program and whether it intends to apply some form of audit process to establish a null point and regular measure of mental health in its workplaces. Council uses relatively crude tools blighted by unconscious bias to measure and report customer satisfaction. Better tools exist based on sophisticated statistical methodologies for obtaining more accurate customer insights. Bragg encourages Council to adopt improved customer insights that should necessarily be regularly audited to provide ratepayers with confidence in Council-promoted customer satisfaction surveys and to prevent Council.
Thank you, Director. Can I please have a councillor move a motion? You've got a question. Councillor Mark, you have a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so the submitter this evening just put a thought in my mind, which I had thought beforehand. When is our next, if not known by the officer, it's okay, I can take it on notice. When is our next customer service review survey due? Because we do that regularly, as in, and all councils do it regularly. And what is the process too, if I can have that as well?
Director Mark.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. The customer satisfaction survey, which is commissioned by the state government for all councils to participate in, and Banyule City Council participates in that customer satisfaction survey. Typically done around about the February-March each year. The results should be out early. I'm not sure whether the results are taking a little bit longer because of the COVID-19, but we typically get it around May, June of each year. The method is a phone survey, and it's a sample of the community and based on its demographic, and usually takes around about 15 minutes, and there's a series of standard questions which the community get asked, and then it's themed or categorised, and then those results are released to the public through the council channels as well as the state government. So yeah, the survey should be available to councils reasonably soon.
Further question, Councillor Mark.
Thank you, Mayor. And are the participants in that survey, are they volunteers, or do they, if someone in the community wants to be part of this survey, are they able to take part in it, or is it random? And is there any remuneration? Are they paid to do these surveys?
Director Mark.
Through you, Mayor, no, it is a random sample of the community, and the community can't elect to participate in that other than being selected randomly. Obviously have a choice not to participate in the survey if they like. And it's based on a sample of age group, gender and suburb, etc. Beg your pardon, sorry. And no, they're not paid for the survey, so it's a voluntary.
Thank you, Director. All good? Okay, does any other councillor have a question? Councillor Craig.
Mine's a very general question. Having read the letter from Bragg, you would think the Audit and Risk Advisory Committee was not performing its duty since I've been a councillor in 2011. I've been to the Audit Committee, the mayors all go to the Audit Committee, and the Councillor Grotty's been going to the Audit Committee since I think he's been elected to council. Overall, I find it doing an exceptionally good job, but why? I'm here to, question is basically trying to defend the Audit Committee. It has been doing a good job. It has been working well. Would the Director like to explain what it's been doing in the last quite a few years? Not just reacting to Bragg, it does it automatically. You would think that Bragg was a saviour of our Audit Committee, and I don't think it is.
Director.
What's it been doing for the last 5 years? Been doing a lot of work actually, and I guess in the spirit of continuous improvement, we're always looking at improving the way we do things at the Audit Committee, and that includes, maturing some of our reports that do go to the Audit Committee. There has been a focus primarily in the past on the financial aspects of council, and a strong and thorough comprehensive internal audit program. We regularly get the Auditor General to come along to those meetings, or representatives of the Auditor General. They look at the audit of our financial statements every year and sign off financial statements. And there's always been a risk and an OH&S component of reports that do go to the committee, and that's in constant review. And what we have done recently is taken the opportunity to do a significant review of our enterprise risk management framework, which was due for a review and a refresh, and we've completed that, and we're just in the process now of rolling that out across the organisation, which incorporates a major review of our strategic risks, and now going through the process of our operational risks as well. So constantly in review, constantly improving and maturing, particularly around that risk management area.
Thank you, Director. You had another question, Councillor Craig.
Just trying to tease out something more on what the Director just said. The Auditor General or a representative from his department are regular attenders of the Audit and Risk Advisory Committee. Any recommendation they would make, his council would adopt almost immediately, I would imagine. So they are the authority that overviews audit risk everywhere in this state. And I assume we have complied to everything that they have requested of this council.
Director Mark.
Through you, Mayor, certainly when there's a focus on council's financial performance and other KPIs, yes, certainly Council Banyule have always got a good, clean bill of health. There's very little that they've been able to identify as in risk exposures or even control improvements. That's because of the comprehensive internal audit program we also have. The Audit Committee also does a whole lot of self-assessments against VAGA reports that get tabled to Parliament. So where they may audit performance audits of other councils, even sometimes other levels of government or agencies. We have a process whereby we do a self-assessment against those recommendations and see how we stack up against some of the recommendations, and then obviously where we need to improve or increase our controls, we'll certainly implement those as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions from any other councillor? Okay. Can I have a councillor move a motion, please? Councillor Craig Langdon, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mark Di Pasquale. Councillor Craig, as the mover, would you like to speak to the item?
I think most of what I wanted to say has also been answered by the Director, very well by the Director, I might add. I didn't prompt him about these things. They're all off the cuff. He did well, exceptionally well. Look, the Audit and Risk Advisory Committee has been doing an exceptional job for years. That's been outlined by the Director just now. I commend every councillor, every mayor that's been on it, and certainly Councillor Grotti has moved heaven and earth to bring it up to what he thinks up to date. That's his role. His previous life in the KPMG has no doubt highlighted that, and I'm sure he might be listening tonight. He's done an outstanding job. I'd like to thank him for his efforts.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mark, as the seconder, would you like to speak to the item?
Oh, Mayor, yeah, just do want to thank Councillor Grotti for being at all the meetings and being our delegate and bringing back information to us as we need it. I have been his substitute for the committee before and have sat on a few meetings in the past. Wow, the amount of information that gets spoken about in those meetings, the different areas of risk and what, the actions that get taken from that, everything from cyber risk to payments to employment. A lot of the meetings were just mind-blowing for me, Mayor, actually. I walked away out of those meetings going, I'm exhausted with the amount of information that was... So no, there's and an organisation of this size in this technological age does have many, many risks that need to be mitigated. So I'm happy to see there's many greens. In the past there were some reds that have been mitigated as well, which is good. So no, thank you very much to Councillor Grotti and all the staff too who do on behalf of all staff and all the community to take part in those meetings.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Craig, as the mover, would you like a right of reply? No? Okay, I now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. And yes, I've sat in on those meetings and they are a bit mind-blowing. Just a bit. Item 7.4, contract number 1038-2020, Calparan Early Childhood Intervention Centre redevelopment. There are no submitters. Can I please have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Mark Di Pasquale. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Tom Melican. Councillor Mark, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. Definitely would like to make a couple of comments because this is a very monumental day for the local Greensborough community. There are many residents in the Greensborough area who have been part of Calparan for many, many years. The original building has been there since the 70s. And over the years, Mayor, leaking roofs, you go in there and have gone in there many times to meet the CEO and staff as well. There have been walls have been put up, making different partitions, offices, etc. So this is time that this facility needs upgrading. And the reason why it needs that is because the NDIS system is about. So the need for this facility was much heightened when the NDIS was first rolled out. We were one of the first regions that had it in our area, so a bit of a, how would we say, a guinea pig, but very successful. So we did show things and limitations and positives for other communities as well to learn from. I really do want to thank the board at Calparan because they do exceptional work, a team of consummate professionals. Thank you very much. Also the CEO down there. Also do want to thank our staff, particularly Director Jeff Glynn, who's had many meetings with the Calparan organisation to with regards to planning, what needs to happen with regards to planning, building, etc. So thank you very much, Director, and your staff as well. And one of the things that is going to be part of this process is a lot of the asbestos that is part of the building is going to be gone. Walls that aren't soundproof, and you can imagine children, not only that, children with some disabilities as well, in areas of rooms being consulted with that have no soundproofing, etc. It does get pretty rowdy. So this is long overdue. This also counts as is one of those that has 10 submitters to the tender came in. So we're going to be getting some pretty good value for money, I believe, with regards to this business. There's not only 1 or 2 which are vying for the business, there are actually 10. So that's very positive. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Melican, as the seconder, would you like to speak to the item?
I'll just say a few words. Yeah, very happy to support this tonight. I remember when this was first discussed many years ago, and it's been a very long process. And as Councillor De Pasquale said, things have changed, their requirements changed. They actually redid their master plan. But I remember the morning that it was announced that Council was going to fund this, and the state government also put up significant funds as well. The community down at Kalparan were absolutely rapt, and that was a while ago, and it has taken a long time to get to this stage, but I'm very happy we have got to this stage because it is a fantastic facility run by many, many very dedicated volunteers who have been there for a long time, and it's one of the real wonderful things about Banyule. We have such a fantastic community to look after the young children, to give them their best possible start in life, and I'm very pleased that this council is able to fund this upgrade that will enable them to facilitate even more help for more people. So very happy to support this tonight.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Craig.
More than pleased to support this. Often driving past the facility on the way to council, do the back route. It is an old and tired looking facility. I'd like to thank Councillor De Pasquale for his championship of this. You've been working at this for a number of years, so well done. I think as Mayor attended several functions for it. I think one time I took Tom down to one at in South Bank. I almost think we got lost. But it was a very good event. So they've been doing their bit to raise funds as well and supporting it. It's a great facility and it needs upgrading, and I'm more than pleased to support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak? Okay. Councillor Marcus, the mover, would you like a right of reply? Okay, I now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Item 7.5, contract number 1031, 2020, Asphalt Resurfacing Program. There is one submitter. The prepared statement will now be read out by Director of City Development, Scott Walker.
Thanks, Mayor. This is being read out on behalf of Jenny Mulholland, OAM, from Ivanhoe, and speaking for the item. Mayor Champion and councillors, I fully support this program. The ageing footpaths, streets and drains, particularly in the southern wards of Banyule, need significant funding to bring these assets to a satisfactory standard. Uneven and badly maintained footpaths, curbs and streets can create hazards for pedestrians and cyclists. I note in this report that the expected expenditure over the next 4 years on this important basic program is $4 million, i.e. an average of $1 million for each of the next 4 years. My question is this enough? I do not think it is sufficient at all. My understanding is that Council needs to spend significantly more on its ageing infrastructure assets, such as footpaths, streets and drains, to get these to just a satisfactory standard. What are the dollars actually required to bring all Banyule streets, footpaths and drainage systems to a satisfactory standard in accordance with Council's asset management plan? Have the priorities on spending on these important basic functions of Council changed in recent years? I note that in the draft 2020-21, the draft budget 2020-21, that it is proposed to spend $7.7 million less on total infrastructure than in 2019-20. including $2.7 million less on roads, streets, footpaths and bridges. This spend on infrastructure is projected to decrease by a further $4.1 million by 2023-24. This is a disturbing trend which I would request Council to review this immediately.
Thank you, Director. Can I please have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Peter, you have a question.
Could I ask of the relevant director to provide some further information on what we are actually spending over the next 4 years? From my understanding, it's quite considerable.
Director Mark.
Through you, Mayor, in terms of road projects, the budget for next year is about $7.5 million and approximately $31 million over the next 4 years. And Council SRP, which is out for community consultation at the moment. That $7.5 million includes a couple of components, but the two biggest components of that budget are for the footpaths, which is proposed to be $2.3 million, and road rehabilitation at $2 million, which includes the road resurfacing, which relates to this contract, plus other road reconstruction and other projects as well around roads, curb and channel, etc. In terms of drainage is $800,000 next year, and typically averages around about $800 to $900 over per year, so around about the $3.2 to $3.6 million over that 4-year period.
Thank you, Director. Did any other councillor have a question? Councillor Mark?
Yes, Mayor and Director, I'm not sure whether you have the figures, but is the projected spending proposed to decrease over the next years?
Director?
Through you, Mayor, it's not proposed to decrease at all. The spending forecasted in next year's budget, as well as the strategic resource plan, is based on Council's asset management plan, so that's a direct contribution to what's needed to maintain and renew our current infrastructure for roads and footpaths and drainage, etc.
You had another question, Councillor Mark?
So is there any information that's out there in the community that is showing these numbers in the future ahead, seeing that I haven't seen these numbers, particularly if we're quoting numbers from the 23-24 budget, which is not set yet. So what information is out there that the community has that I myself don't have?
Director Mark?
Through you, Mayor, it's, I think Jenny Mulholland is referring to some analysis of Capital Works program in the budget, so that's where it's been sourced from, and it's comparing the infrastructure forecast actual for this year compared to the proposed budget for next year. This year it's forecast to be $24.7 million, and next year budgeted for 17. I'll need to take some of that on notice, because I think what typically happens with that is there's some carry forward from the future year. So typically the budget for infrastructure doesn't vary widely from year to year, and there's an actual increase every year to keep pace with the cost of replacing those and renewing those assets. I haven't got the detail in front of me, but I suspect it's probably because the forecast for this year is a lot higher than normal, than regularly, and as a result of probably a carry forward from last year. But Council's not spending any less than it normally does on its infrastructure assets.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Langdon, did you have a question?
Basically, Councillor Di Pasquale asked it just before. How could someone read the future budget and come up with the figures that former Councillor Jenny Mulholland has done and made these sort of comments, which are now public? How can that be ascertained from those papers, and again, that we don't know of? And I don't want to hear reports coming to a council live streaming that makes it look like we're not doing our jobs, when we are. You mentioned figures which are far higher than these in the statement read out. So I just want that clarified, that we are spending well and truly above what's being suggested by the correspondent.
Director Mark?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. So the figures that were quoted were directly sourced from Council's budget papers. But as previously mentioned, with the forecast for this year, I'll need to take that on notice, but my assumption is that, this year, as in the 1920 forecast, is a lot higher than normal because of the carry forwards from prior years to finalise those projects. So when we look at the proposed budget and I look at our strategic resource plan, that does level out to a normalised figure over the next 4 years, based on asset management plans which determine how much we need to spend on renewal and upgrade of our infrastructure, roads, drains, footpaths. And each year that increases based on the cost. But certainly, I think this year's forecast is unusually high, but I'll need to check. I'll confirm there are some carry forwards in that figure.
Thank you, Director. Another question, Councillor?
First of all, I'd like to thank the Director. It's actually not his portfolio. He is in charge of the money, without a doubt, but it's not his portfolio. I'm sure the Director was here, could probably come off a bit with all the answers. But when the answers come back to this Council, how will the public know what those answers are? That's my question. They've been raised in the public spectrum. How do we address it in the public?
Director Mark?
So through you, Mayor, I think what we could do is when we, the next council meeting, we can confirm those figures. And once again, when council are looking at adopting the budget as well, there's an opportunity there to reconfirm.
Thank you, Director. Does any other councillor have a question? Okay, can I please have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Peter Castaldo, can I have a seconder? Councillor Craig Langdon. Councillor Peter, as the mover, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank the officers, Alex Glamona from the Civil Construction Supervisor, Assets and City Services. These guys don't get enough thanks. They do a lot of work for our community. It is a large portfolio, and thank you to Mark this evening for providing some of those important indicators that we're doing a good job and spending significantly in this area. Now, it is quite easy for members in our community to get confused, and that's why it's really good to have experienced people on council to provide the right information. And I'd also like to identify or draw attention to the evaluation criteria on this one. It's not just on price. While I would say that we did get a very good price for this, we evaluated on a range of other aspects like the amount of recovered materials from recycling, and we did some work in this space, went further than we have in the past, and we got quite good responses back from the majority or all of the applicants. And so it is good that our council works towards delivering good public services, but also pushes the environmental components of that as well, and encourages the businesses that provide these services to consider it and reevaluate how they can improve their processes. So I'm very happy with the outcome of this tender process, and look forward to it starting to roll out and provide better services to our community.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Langdon, as the seconder, would you like to speak to the item?
Just briefly, just as a councillor for one of the southern wards, look, I'm more than pleased with this program. Many roads are being resheeted in the Olympia ward, and it's a great job being done across the entire council. And I think we've even speeded up a few things of lately on to do with our roads. For example, I raised the other day that our white lines and speed humps were a bit faded, especially under the trees, and within 2 weeks they're being painted. So the council is being very proactive in trying to address all those issues. And I know it's separate, but I will say it, we are spending about $6 million over 4 years doing the Darebin Trail. So it's separate to the road resheeting, but it's a lot of money being spent on areas that need improvement.
Thank you, councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of comments, and just to thank former councillor Jenny Mulholland for actually submitting tonight and giving us this information here. Former councillor Mulholland was a former mayor twice as well of this beautiful municipality. So thank you very much. That's exceptional service to this community over many, many, many years. So thank you very much to her for this and continuing to stand for the community. She's raised some good points, Mayor, here with regards to why isn't this reviewed again and all the time. I do understand that, and we will be doing that. There's also some things I know she understands that aren't put into because it's such a short time to submit. And it was touched on it, but you know, putting everything into the same category of footpaths, roads, drains, bridges, all in the same category is not necessarily the way that the budget should work and the way that it works. It actually works in that footpaths have their budget and that has its contract. Just like tonight, we're looking at the contract for the resurfacing. That's its own contract and its own works. And I'm pretty sure she was actually around on council when this council undertook extensive work on behalf of the community to put cameras down all our drains, and we actually had machinery that actually went on all our footpaths and took video footage of all the footpaths, every crack, everything that needed to be done, etc. So, and it has been timelined out in the future years so that and I know there are times out there where residents say, oh, well, that footpath's been damaged and, you know, why hasn't it been replaced? And, you know, this tree's pulling up the footpath and why hasn't it been replaced? What is that council doing? But, look, it's a matter of delivering what can be delivered in a certain time with the amount of workforce that there is. So I think it's being managed very, very well. And also with regards to drains, we did make a decision to put in an extra $5 million to remediate some drainage problems that we were having a few years ago as well. So we have pumped a lot of dollars into these areas, individually though, not as a big group. But thank you very much to former Councillor Mulholland for submitting tonight. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Mark. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Excuse me. Councillor Peter, as the mover, would you like a right of reply? No? Okay, I now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Item 7.6, Assembly of Councillors. There are no submitters. Can I please have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Craig Langdon. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Peter Castaldo. Councillor Langdon, would you like to speak to the item?
Exceptionally briefly, I believe the advisory committees usually come up in this section, am I correct? And there hasn't been any advisory committees meeting, but as of last week, it might have been late the week before, they are meeting on Teams. We're not officially meeting, but we are getting together on Teams and discussing things, and will never come up in the Assembly of Councils, but I just want the public to know those advisory committees are still discussing, are still semi-meeting on Teams and what have you. Not necessarily everyone can get there, but it is still a work in progress.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Peter is the seconder. You clearly aren't going to be speaking to the item. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Okay, I now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Item 8.1, sealing of documents. There are no submitters. Councillor Mark, you are moving a motion. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Tom Melican. Councillor Mark, you would not like to speak to the item. Councillor Tom, would you like? No? Okay. I now put that in motion. Sorry, would any other councillor like to speak? Okay. I now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? And that is carried. Item 9.1, gambling harm and COVID-19. There are 3 submitters. The prepared statements will now be read out by our CEO, Alison Beckwith, and Director of City Development, Scott Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. This statement's being read out on behalf of Ted Smart from Eaglemont, and he's for the statement. My name is Edward Smart from Eaglemont, and I'm totally in favour of any measures that local, state and federal government can do to stop gambling. I have on 3 occasions been requested to help situations within the Banyule municipality. All cases, being either female or male, were absolutely hooked and destitute because of gambling, be it online or at local venues. Now, whilst the stay-at-home for coronavirus is applied, I am now more than alarmed that gambling is increasing online. I request Council seriously address this issue by all options available by Council and consider this issue as serious as the financial package that Council has authorised to help our local community. Please do not dismiss this issue, but do everything in Council's power to achieve a better life for the people living in Banyule. Thank you.
Thank you. Director of City Development, Scott Walker.
Thanks, Mayor. This submission is being read out on behalf of David Mulholland from Heidelberg Heights, and it's against the item. Our RSLs have been greatly impacted by the COVID-19 virus crisis, with shutdowns meaning people aren't visiting to have a beer, meal or have a go at the pokies. Bragg believes councils should support our RSLs at this time in whatever way they can. The RSL on Bell, Watsonia RSL, the Montmorency Eltham RSL, the Greensborough RSL, and we are looking forward to getting back into the Ivanhoe RSL. These all need financial support from Council. Instead, this Council seeks to give RSLs money only in exchange for reducing the profitability of RSLs by surrendering their gaming licences. While providing some needed support now, this will only lead to the demise of RSLs in the medium term. Council are using RSL's pokies to grandstand at the same time accepting profits of gambling to give to the community in community fund grants. Why don't you just allow RSLs to keep their grant money instead of running this merry-go-round of funds where you provide some emergency relief only to take funds in community grants? Isn't this notice of motion just a little hypocritical, as was the hundreds of thousands of dollars spent by Council to extend parking adjacent to the Watsonia RSL? This notice of motion will prove to be lip service when you hand out those community grants and you don't tell the community that it's coming from pokie machines. It's absolutely hypocritical by Council. Councillors voting for this notice of motion will be voting for the slow demise of their local RSL.
Thank you, Director. And Alison, our CEO.
Thanks, Mayor. This statement's been read out on behalf of Rosamond Krivenik from West Heidelberg, speaking for the notice of motion. I support the proposed motion, subject to the correcting the word employment to unemployment in point 1A. The proposed motion sets out the ethical and economical rationale cause for Council with regard to gambling and gaming facilities online and at physical venues. It would be contrary to sound economic management to deal reactively with the continuous growth in gambling opportunities, because it will increase the burden on local and state governments to remedy the resulting personal and social harm. It is likely to take the actions proposed under point 2 of the motion. The Federal Department of Social Services and the Responsible Gambling Minister Advisory Council Victoria should also be notified of Council's position and its reasons, as these levels of government share similar interest in reducing social harms and limiting the costs of remediation and support. The proposed motion points out the unique opportunity afforded in the current pandemic to study the social effects of reducing some gambling and gaming opportunities. Council could seek the support of ACMA to conduct a longer-term study of the effects of reducing opportunities for the club and pub gaming and whether they are necessarily displaced into online gaming. Thank you for the opportunity to make this statement.
Thank you very much. Can I please have a councillor move a motion? Councillor Craig Langdon. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Peter Castaldo. Councillor Langdon, as the mover, would you like to speak to the item?
Just a slight amendment first, picking up Rosemond's suggestion that it was not item 1A but 1B. It does read, and employment levels are significantly reduced. I don't think that's quite meant to read employment levels, but unemployment levels are significantly reduced. So the word unemployment should be there. So she was correct, but the wrong number. But thank you very much for picking that up, actually. I missed it. I assume my speaking time might start now, okay, to the officers behind me. Thank you. Look, the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly changed the way the world is operating, Victoria and Melbourne and the clubs that have poker machines and gambling. Gambling online has certainly increased dramatically. I have never gambled online specifically, but have dropped off a bit lately. When I get onto Facebook or anything like that, ads coming, gambling online, do this, do that. It's in your face every 5 seconds. It's ridiculous. And gambling online on the TV is something shocking. There hasn't been major sporting events, unfortunately, that have been able to flog their dead horse, but they do it every time. I remember one of the grand finals, every ad was a gambling ad. So it is out there all the time. Now, I believe Victorians lose $2.7 billion per year on gambling. It's a lot of money, and there are 635 gaming machines in 9 venues across this city. And from July 19 to February 2020, 35 million was lost in that figure there. Look, this is a grand opportunity to start thinking beyond poker machines, beyond online gambling. My concern is governments need money. They are spending a lot to rejuvenate the economy. I don't want to be a gambling red recovery. For those people who are struggling, often gambling is a source of easing their frustration. Take their pay packet or whatever, bonus or money from anyone to try to double it. Ted Smart did use them, because he read out his letter to me, some examples which were eliminated, that perhaps are a bit too personal, but he has first-hand evidence of how gambling can affect people. The Reverend John Sanders, priest in charge at St George's, also wrote him, but he missed the timetable, supporting this and commending council for even considering this. So, as for the poker machines in the RSLs, he mentioned the speaker. One of the speakers mentioned the Ivanhoe RSL. Ivanhoe RSL is exceptionally proud not to have poker machines. It has survived without poker machines the entire time. The only reason it's not in operation was a significant fire just before Anzac Day, I think 3 years ago. So they are doing exceptionally well without poker machines. Look, I'd like to support the RSLs. I think, if I remember correctly, and Councillor Malikan might share this, the Heidelberg RSL, before they were forced to close, wanted to get out of their poker machines. It was costing them money. So if we can encourage the RSLs and the state government can allow them to get out of the poker machines, it could be a great thing. And the RSLs do a great job. This is not an attack on the RSLs at all. They do a great job, and I'm the first to say that, and great admirer of their work. So this is about tackling gambling across the board so we can address it, and this is a prime time to do it.
Thank you, Councillor. Peter, Councillor Peter is the seconder. Would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. I fully support this notice of motion put forward by Councillor Langdon. Thank you for bringing this forward. I'd also like to acknowledge the significant contribution by the Alliance for Gambling Reform for their ongoing information they provide to councils and their campaign to reduce gambling harm, especially now when the community is vulnerable to financial loss and hardship. If an organisation is dependent on gambling in our community, then its funding or business model needs to be reconsidered. And I, as a councillor on Banyule City Council, is fully supportive of working with any community group or organisation that needs to address this. This is not an attack on any organisation, but an important nudge in the right direction to reduce the very significant gambling losses in our community and associated stresses on families and individuals that suffer the consequences. And I think there were a couple of very powerful stories in some of the submissions from Ted Smart this evening that would be very important to be read out, but at the same time we couldn't. And it just goes to show, when you get into the detail of the very significant and painful impacts gambling has on people in our community, it really brings my attention back to how important this reform is. And I'd also like to thank Rosamund Krivenik for her very detailed contributions this evening. Thank you. And it's really an issue that we should not be trying to divide our community and create conflict. It's not a political issue. Gambling is a serious issue and we need to treat it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Mark.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I think very willing to support this notice of motion, not willing to bag out or affect the RSLs or anyone who is into gaming or anything like that at the same time period, because the RSLs are shut down at the moment. You know, they need to be going through their own, how their business is going to run, because they do great service for the veterans, bringing them together and making sure that the harms that could be happening if they weren't in an environment like that aren't, and the support that they need, that they actually get that. So, but traditionally, the pokies have been, RSLs have been notorious for having poker machines. But hey, Mayor, we've got, per capita in Australia, we've got more poker machines than anywhere else in the world. That's how Australia has been set up. And it was set up in a very, very quick time. It's been set up like that in a generation. And for the generation to get a handle on that, we haven't been able to get a handle on that. So that is the major problem. But what I see the opportunity here, Mayor, is that this is going to be, and Councillor Langdon is formally asking us for, on behalf of Council, so Council to write to the Victorian Government, write to the Federal Government about these issues. I'm all for this because, the amount of percentage of taxes that are in the gambling dollar is exorbitant. And I still can't fathom that it's all not happening now. Like, even this coronavirus thing is going on, everything to be shut down, and the revenue that the state and the federal government aren't receiving from gambling, etc., is just mind-blowing as far as I'm concerned. So they're going to be wanting to get back into it very, very quickly as they possibly can. And here we are saying, no, our community can continue to run without these things there. If there aren't poker machines, we're still going to be, we'll work anyway. We'll be functional anyway without these machines and without gambling, full stop. So it's a really good opportunity. So thank you, Councillor, for bringing this up. And I'm happy to support.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tom, you look like you wish to speak to the item.
Yeah, I'll just say a few words. I don't see how supporting this motion diminishes our responsibility or our desires to support the RSLs, because we're very keen and we always have supported our RSLs. And I note that one of the RSLs is actually on council land, and we've given them rent relief during the COVID crisis. So we're certainly supporting that RSL. And another RSL, just last council meeting, we allocated a building for a lease for their uses. Wasn't quite rent-free, but it was basically they were paying for the maintenance of the facility. So we're providing that site so they could continue the good work they do in the community. And it'd be devastating for this council if we lost one of our RSLs. I think back to the time when the Heidelberg RSL, as Councillor Langdon talked about, basically collapsed because of its debt it owed because of poker machines it had, and it couldn't get the revenue into those machines, and it was losing money because it had borrowed so much to buy poker machines. So that was the death of that RSL. An RSL that had been there for a long time, provided good community service and was a meeting point for veterans. Now it's gone because it took on poker machines, not its own volition. It was actually forced to take, my understanding was, it was told by senior people in the RSL to take on poker machines. It did that. and lost money and closed, and the building was sold, which is a disgrace, absolute disgrace. And I think, and as Councillor Di Pasquale mentioned, that Australia has 0.3%, 0.3 of 1% of the population in the world, and 20% of the poker machines in the world. We are certainly inflicted with the damage that poker machines do to us, and this council should stand up. Something like $55 million lost in poker machines in Banyule every year. And what benefit do we get out of it? So I'll support this tonight, but I will also support the RSLs, and whatever they come to us with, whatever their requirements are, we will do everything within our power to make sure the RSLs continue and they thrive.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Langdon, as the mover, would you like a right of reply? Okay, you have 2 minutes.
I thank the fellow councillors for their support, and yes, we have emphasised on poker machines, and it is a huge revenue raiser for the state government. Online gambling, I'm not sure exactly what revenue they get from it, but it seems to be the next wave, the next generation. We've got to be able to address that. Yes, a lot of people go to the RSLs and a lot of them are veterans and what have you, and they give you a sense of community at least, friendship, companionship and all that. But when you get gambling online, you're there by yourself. I don't know how you don't get any social interaction at all. So my major push is also, and again, not an attack on the RSL, I support them fully, but online gambling has to be looked and addressed significantly by the state and federal governments, because it is becoming nuisance. The people I speak to complain about the ads on TV all the time. They say, we're sick of them. And they're obviously not gamblers. There must be a silent, I hope it's a minority, sit there and go, oh, let's try it, because all the ads make it look like dead easy to win a fortune. That's the great lure. I go back to the days, I think we had tats of 60,000. Everyone bought a TATS ticket, or not everyone bought a TATS ticket, and you had to look it in the paper. That was once a week or once a fortnight to get the results. That was gambling. I acknowledge that. My grandparents were always in for it, but whatever. But it was not in your face. It was not as significant, and the amount of coming out of the people's pockets was very low in compared to today, and that's what we have to address. I do thank the two people who contributed, both Ted and Father John Sanderson from the East Ivanhoe area, for their contribution supporting what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I now put that in motion. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Point 10, general business. Not aware of any general business items. Okay, in accordance with section 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020, the meeting will now be closed to members of the public for the consideration of a confidential matter relating to private commercial information. Can I please have a councillor move the motion? Councillor Langdon. Can I please have a seconder? Councillor Tom Melican. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. So we have just moved to close the meeting to members of the public prior to considering this confidential item 11.1. The next ordinary meeting of council will be held on Monday the 15th of June 2020 at 7 p.m. I now adjourn the meeting at 8:57 p.m. Thank you very much for viewing and commenting, and enjoy the rest of your evening.